Yeah.
He, to me, is the person who broke up Zach and Kelly on Saved by the Bell. And
That's right. That's right. I did know that. He's always been a bad boy.
He has.
Kelly, do you have a Patrick Muldoon
I do
memory?
not. I do not. But
How has
now
Patrick
I'm
Muldoon
dying.
hurt you, Kelly? Welcome to 1999, the podcast. I feel like we've been here before. I'm John Brooks.
I'm still Jen Tisdale.
And Jen, how are you? What's going on?
I'm great. As I was saying before, we were rudely interrupted by a tiny animal, by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I am excited to talk about this motion picture.
I'm interested to find out where that excitement comes from. But
we texted a little earlier today, and it was just about logistical things, but I got the sense that you were horrified by this movie, and
I've seen this movie a number of times.
So have I, but I forgot all of it.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be more 1999.
That is true, and we're definitely going to talk about the sheer how specifically 1999 this movie is in so many ways.
Big chunky rings that I had. This, she wears one, and I know we're going to get into it. I don't want to.
An excessive amount of inflatable furniture.
Boy, lots to say about that. But it's good for when you got a little like demony priest who needs to toss things around. Certainly makes it easier.
That's true. That's a good point
for him.
Anyhow, tonight's movie that we're cryptically alluding to here is impressively the 49th highest grossing movie of the year, which is more than I would have thought, finishing just ahead of an upcoming movie in this round, The House on Haunted Hill, which was at 50th. It made $50 million domestically and just shy of $90 million worldwide on a $29 million budget. Opening at number 1 on September the 10th at over $18 million on a spooky box office weekend that saw The Sixth Sense take second with $16 million, and also opening Stir of Echoes, debuting at $5.8 million in third. So we're doing the Sixth Sense September 10th wraparound on the podcast.
That's as it's more commonly known. The Sixth Sense September 10th wraparound.
Starring Patricia Arquette, Gabriel Byrne, Baby Byrne, Nia Long, Jonathan Pryce, Rade Saberja, Portia de Rossi, Patrick Muldoon, Anne Cusack, eldest sibling of the Cusacks,
right,
and Enrique Colantoni. Today, we are discussing Stigmata.
Yes, I'm excited.
Jen,
yep.
What's Stigmata about?
Well, thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Stigmata centers around Frankie Page, played by Patricia Arquette, an atheist hairdresser who suddenly experiences the gift/curse of stigmata. This comes to her not by way of an unwavering faith, but via a stolen souvenir mailed to her by her world-traveling mother, who apparently likes anything from a rosary to a cruise. The film's semi-hero is Father Andrew Kiernan, played by Irish actor and the former Mr. Ellen Barkin, Gabriel Byrne. His character is that rare science-loving priest who is a myth-buster of sorts for the Catholic Church, sent to accept or reject Frankie's displays of the stigmata. Hijinks ensue when it's discovered she is possessed by the priest whose snatched rosary is the root cause of the literal holy war raging in her body. It culminates in the realization that said priest, along with 2 others, previously translated an ancient scroll said to be written by Jesus Christ himself, who does not believe in location. According to the writings, he sought to teach people that God is within us and is everywhere, therefore threatening the Catholic Church and Frankie's own life. I read, and I didn't tell anybody what stigmata is because I just assume everybody knows. I mean, if you've watched this movie, sure, but for some reason I'm like, we all know this, right? We all know what the act of stigmata is, don't we?
We do. I was kind of thinking about, instead of asking you what Stigmata is about, saying, Jen, what's Stigmata? And then I was hoping that you'd say, nothing. What's Stigmata you?
Also, like, the more I say the word stigmata, the less my brain believes it's real. And is it? I'm like, stigmata. That's not a thing. You say stigmata.
Hey, what's stigmata?
I say stigmata. Let's call the whole thing off. I just wrote that.
That was good.
Thanks.
That was good.
Okay.
3.5 stars. This music video of a movie was directed by a music video director of a director, namely Rupert Wainwright. Not of the Wainwrights, not of the
Rufus
Loudon
Wainwright, who I kept saying,
Rufus.
Rufus Wainwright?
Yeah, I wish. Wouldn't that be great if Rufus Wainwright
From
directed
your
this movie?
lips to God's ears,
Mm-hmm.
if ever.
Wainwright, famous for his work with NWA, Public Enemy, and most prolifically MC Hammer. He was also the director of the 1994 family comedy Blank Check, which answered the burning question, what if the youngest sibling from Family Ties was in a movie?
So sorry. I love the movies.
The Brian Bonsall vehicle, Blank Check. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That surprise Keaton baby, that change of life Keaton baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The film that went on to launch the Brian Bonsall cinematic universe.
Yeah.
There is definitely some universe where that movie was huge and he became a giant star, and now he's like winning Oscars for daring roles. I bet.
Next to everyone from Three Ninjas or whatever that other. Weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Time for kids being weird.
Mm-hmm. Wainwright's only other major feature was his 2005 remake of John Carpenter's 1980 film The Fog, this time starring Maggie Grace and Tom Welling, who were on TV at the time, but who by now you've completely forgotten about. The story was written by the insanely appropriately named Tom Lazarus.
Oh, come on.
Who in the 80s and 90s was a fairly active screenwriter, including a stint on the Nightmare on Elm Street anthology series, Freddy's Nightmares.
Mm-hmm. I loved that show.
I bet you did. Mm-hmm. And the script was co-written by Rick Ramage, whose resume is pretty thin, really, and whose biggest success was UPN's short-lived attempt at capitalizing on its Buffy acquisition, the paranormal cop show Haunted, starring a post-Party of Five pre-Lost Matthew Fox, Michael Irby, Eddie Cahill, and in one episode, a relatively unknown actor named Mahershala Ali in just his second screen credit.
What?
So, yeah.
Is this lost to the annals?
I forgot, like, when I was researching this, I'm like, I vaguely remember this existing.
I don't recall this at all. And I'm so sorry I said annals. I just know that this is like a big hole-focused episode.
Yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, it's no longer the annals of time. It's the annals.
You remember when Buffy was happening and the WB was like, also Charmed, because it was like, let's have this other not as good show about witches and stuff.
Charmed was not as good as Buffy. Nothing could ever be as good as Buffy, but I did enjoy Charmed. Mm-hmm. And I primarily enjoyed it because of its use of the same cover of How Soon Is Now that was in The Craft. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, this must be the same. It's not. But my brain was like, these are probably quite similar.
Yeah, I think Haunted was basically the same idea. It was like, let's have a less good show about scary things.
Yeah, something's pre-internet when you call it Haunted, because you don't have to worry about somebody Googling and looking for it. You couldn't. Mm-hmm. You could never call it. You just couldn't. Good luck. Mm-hmm. Good luck capturing that SEO. That's my job. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go ahead.
While it debuted at number 1 at the box office, Stigmata was poorly received by critics, holding a 22% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 28 Metacritic score. In the Chicago Sun-Times, Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars with a Metacritic score at 50 and began his review by writing, quote, Stigmata is possibly the funniest movie ever made about Catholicism from a theological point of view, but concluding... I mean, that's not wrong. Does the film have redeeming moments? A few. Arquette is vulnerable and touching in an impossible role. I liked the idea of placing her character within a working-class world. There's a scene where a customer in the beauty shop resists having her hair treated by a woman with bleeding wrists. And Nia Long was fun with the has fun with the role of Frankie's best friend. When your pal starts bleeding and hallucinating, it's obviously time for her to get out of the house and hit the clubs.
Oh my
Stigmata
God,
this is a great review. Stigmata has generated outrage in some Catholic circles. I don't know why. It provides a valuable recruiting service by suggesting to the masses that the church is the place to go for real real miracles and supernatural manifestations. It is difficult to imagine this story involving a Unitarian. First get them in the door, then start them on the catechism.
Wow, that's probably one of the funnier reviews.
I love when Roger Ebert is inspired or was inspired to write something, to just like go off.
This is the man who wrote the sequel to Valley of the Dolls. That's what
Exactly.
I hear in that review.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Same guy.
Yep. Same guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Others were less generous than Ebert. Andy Seiler in the USA Today wrote, quote, "The scariest thing about this appalling and seemingly endless movie is that you paid for your ticket and now you have to sit through it." In Rolling Stone, Peter Travers wrote, quote, "There should be a place in hell for hacks who turn derivative terror trash and then pretend they're doing an important investigative piece on Vatican corruption."
I don't think Peter Travers liked anything, to be perfectly honest with you.
He's
a curmudgeon. Curmudgeon.
Yeah, he likes being a curmudgeon.
Mhm.
When he writes, the thing about Peter Travers is when he writes a really glowing review, it's really good. Like when he actually likes a movie, it's really worth reading his reviews, but few and far between. Mark Savlov in the Austin Chronicle wrote, "The only question audiences are likely to be asking their higher power in the wake of viewing this film is, what the fuck?" Bob Graham of the San Francisco Chronicle wrote, "What is bloody and full of holes?" I like that one. And here's my favorite, Paul Malcolm of LA Weekly, who wrote, "A better title for this flick might have been Astigmatism. Nothing ever comes into focus long enough to deliver even the faintest sense of fright." But Jan, not TNT Rough Cut, who said the movie, quote, "ranks with the best of the bunch, given its spooky storyline that fuses religion and down-to-earth characters." I love TNT Rough Cut so much.
These are down-to-earth characters. Oh.
Yeah, very relatable. All these characters in this movie. Anyway, that's what critics thought about Stigmata. We're going to find out what we thought about Stigmata. And joining us here in the room now to talk about Stigmata, because we talked about Stigmata just for the briefest moment in an episode of a different podcast, is Kelly Baker.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on.
Woo.
Thank you for watching Stigmata so that we can
It's such a weird movie.
Love it.
It's such a weird movie.
Love it.
Yeah.
It is
And John, are you drinking red wine because of the blood of the blood of Christ?
The blood of Christ.
The blood of
Christ.
Great.
Yeah, it felt just appropriate. I don't really drink at home very often, but
that makes sense. It makes sense.
For this movie.
This movie deserved it. Yeah, there's something.
It deserved it. Kelly, how are you? It says here on my notes that you are the co-host of a podcast called Pod Only Knows. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, my co-host is someone you know. His name is John Brooks. So, yeah,
shit, that's what
funny that.
Okay. It's all coming back to me now. It's all coming back to me now.
It is.
Kelly, we had Jen on our podcast last week, so we're just flipping the tables around now.
Right.
Like Jesus in the temple, upset about having the wrong gospel or something.
Yeah.
So let's dig into it. Stigmata falls into the genre of Catholic horror, I think, which is something that we recently talked about as well. But not especially, I don't know. Were either of you ever horrified or scared at any point during this movie whatsoever?
No.
Yeah.
I was actually, I found parts of it to be quite beautiful, in fact. Primarily, wherever, literally at one point I said to my person, I said, they're definitely not filming at the Vatican, but wherever that is stunning. And then at the end, sort of the final scene in that, the nunnery, get thee to the nunnery, the convent, a lot of beautiful things to look at. And then also Pittsburgh. I don't want to disparage Pittsburgh. It is the Holy Land in this motion picture, but it's, I've never seen so much rain.
It does rain a lot in this movie for reasons that I don't really understand, aside from
that are unclear, but yeah,
very unclear.
I guess it's hard to be spooked out on a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah, yeah, you need the rain for the atmosphere, I
Mhm.
guess,
Okay.
of what's going on. But yeah, I lots of rain, lots of weird cuts in the movie, and some artistic choices that are intriguing. About how
1999.
things are cut together. Yeah, yeah, definitely a vibe there. That's going on. But yeah, I didn't find it particularly scary at all for it to
No,
be a horror movie. Sort of gross and body horror, I
there's
think,
some
but
body horror. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but not scary. I was watching it earlier today thinking like, man, I watched this in the movie theater and I paid money for this at a certain point, and then I just paid money for it
Did you?
again.
Did you really go see this in theaters?
So yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good that's
yeah,
interesting. I
I
didn't for
know.
sure. Are you the
I
only one who saw it in
did.
theaters? Oh
Oh,
my
I
god!
think
wow.
I did. Yeah, no, I saw it in theaters. I helped knock oh
The Sixth
gosh, the
Sense.
M. Night Shyamalan Sixth Sense
Yep.
out of the out
Yeah.
of the number 1 spot, and
Wow.
helped make this a popular movie there for a moment.
Yeah. That's okay. That's like when I voted for Nader and then Bush won, and I said, "Well, there you go. I don't know what to say about that, guys. Sorry." Um, we've all been there.
Yeah, when I was reading about this earlier today, I felt really bad where I had this moment where I was like, "Oh no, I am part of the
No,
problem here."
M. Night
Yeah.
Shyamalan is going to go to sleep on his big gold pillow. He'll be okay.
He'll be fine. He'll
Yeah.
be fine. But no, I remember seeing it in the theaters, and all I could remember from seeing it in the theaters, because I was 19 at the time, and I am definitely not 19 now,
Hmm.
is that it involved a lot of blood. And then I walked away from it today being like, oh, it still involves a
Um,
lot of blood.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I want to say something
Yeah.
about the blood really quick. I got a couple sources for my little tidbits today. One is Divine Rights: The Story of Stigmata, which was a promotional documentary released in conjunction with the film. It's pretty
oh,
Oh
interesting.
no
my god.
way.
Yep. And the other one is Stigmata Scare Tactics Nearly Caused Its Stars to Pass on the Project, which is in Entertainment Weekly, September 10th, 1999. And so visually, they took the red out of everything. You don't notice it in order to make the blood pop. So yeah, there was a lot of blood,
Oh right.
but
Right.
perhaps it wasn't really that much blood because they took out the red intentionally to bring the blood to life,
Huh.
as it were. So perhaps because
Interesting.
like if we really think about it, we don't see that much blood, but it is so visually jarring. That was their choice there. It's the star of this motion picture, number one on the call sheet, blood.
Right.
Patricia
I
Arquette,
agree.
Gabriel Byrne. I agree as well. And then, sorry,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ coming in hot at number 4. My dude, so sorry.
All the crucifixes that are everywhere that we spend a long time like looking at and spending just a gratuitous amount of camera time like longingly looking at crucifixes
You
also in
know,
Yeah.
this movie.
skinny
Yeah.
S-shaped Jesus as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
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 So
I definitely I remember wanting to see this in the theater, and I was trying to think about why, and then I realized it came out September 10th, and that means that I was like just transitioning back to college uh, when this came out, right? So like it would have been the beginning of the semester, and I would have had a hard time getting out to the movies around then. This was absolutely like, you know, right up my down the middle of my
yeah,
like bullseye genre. I mean, like religious studies major 19-year-old jam, right? Like, or 20. I was 20 at the time. Yeah, this was like made for me at the time.
yeah,
Like, absolutely the sort of thing that I wanted to see. So I remember wanting to see it in the theater, but I don't think anybody wanted to see it with me. I probably was very busy at the time. I remember the first time that I saw it was definitely on DVD, probably that winter sometime. And I I didn't hate the movie then, and I don't hate the movie now. And I don't think it's bad. I have a lot of things that I sort of yell at it
yeah,
uh, that are just like really infuriating.
yeah. I have
And
some
it's
questions.
very long, and like nothing really happens, and it's not
Yeah.
scary.
It's a little,
Yeah.
But
it is a little unclear. I mean, all of this, like, I guess we'll get into it. I'd love to start at the top if we could, though.
Let's do it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
With Gabriel Byrne arriving at this bloody weeping statue and, the rosary being stolen. I had my so yeah, so Gabriel Byrne, as I said in the plot description, is like a myth busting science priest. He's
Yeah.
It's strange. Yeah, I'm sure those people exist. I'm sure they do. John, you're the professional. Kelly, you're
Yeah.
also in a religious-ish podcast. You guys must know. But it's like, I guess I didn't think that was real. I guess I didn't know. Is this a real thing? Yeah.
I
The
can't
Catholic
speak
Church
to
has
how.
this department. It's HR.
Yes, I can't speak to how real the portrayal of it is specifically, but the Catholic Church does indeed have like inquisitors that go and investigate supposed miracles and like crying statues and stigmata and all that sort of thing. That is real. The Vatican also has scientists whose job it is to like do science. I found it interesting that his character is a chemist, I think.
He's a chemist, yeah.
But that's what Pope Francis was, like the same thing. They were the same kind of chemist too, which is weird because Pope Francis was
That seems like the science that's like a loophole. Like I get to still be a scientist and also like believe in God, because if you're anything else, then your faith might come into question. But a chemist is just like you can say to yourself, well, God made these, so I'm just looking at these things God made, whereas other things might challenge the very existence of God.
And he talks about that in this very weird justification as to like why he decided to like be a priest. And he gets the age of the earth wrong, but that's fine. But
that's fine. It's cool.
I gotta say though, like the one thing about this movie is I love the whole concept of Gabriel Byrne's character, and like that character would have made a really cool TV show. Like have him just like dealing with his crisis of faith and investigating all kinds of weird.
Well, Constantine is not a priest, but that's very Constantine-esque.
It does. Yeah, it felt Constantine-y to me. And that's one of my all-time favorite movies is Constantine, Keanu Reeves in that role.
Right.
So yeah.
Yes.
But no, I would have watched that TV show. I mean, that would have been my jam, John, is to watch a TV show where he's going around and doing this kind of Mythbusters sort of thing while also struggling and thinking really deeply thoughts about his faith and doubt.
And getting horny. Kind of
stuff, right? Yeah. Also, Gabriel Byrne, right? I mean, come on. That
era, Gabriel Byrne.
Doesn't hurt that he was hot also. So, I mean, as a piece of this, but yeah, I know it's interesting the way it starts and the visuals that they have. And of course, this would have to be somewhere like of course it's Brazil, right? Like in the way that they stage this, right? Like naturally.
Yeah.
This is how they do this, right? Naturally, the rosary is stolen and some white lady purchases it on the street, right?
And gives it to a different white lady. Yeah.
And gives it to a different white lady, right? I mean, of course this would be the way this works. And it's haunted, right? I mean, who would have known it would be haunted? And it could be haunted, but that's where we are, right? With this haunted rosaries. That I think that's one of my favorite pieces of this is the haunted rosary piece, where I was like, lots of fun that we can be haunted in that way and have the priest work this magic that I didn't know could happen, but I was here for. So. But yeah, lots of fun.
Well, I do have a question. In these priests that are sent to investigate, do they want these things to be real or not? Is the hope of the church
that's a good question.
That they want this to be, because again, what a great, not that they require proof, because that's the very definition of faith. Although the very definition of faith suggests that you don't really know. That's why you have faith, but we're not going to get into that. But like, you would think you'd want something that would tangible proof. Do you think they want to prove this is real?
So I will say that to the credit of the Catholic Church, that in general, I think their typical disposition is one of skepticism. that to be recognized as a genuine sort of like miracle occurrence or sight actually is something they really sort of push hard against. And so when something like, Fatima or something like that, when it sort of becomes authenticated as a legitimate miracle, it gives it a little bit more gravity. If they just sort of were like, yeah, good enough, right? It would be a world littered with like miraculous events and places
all the time. Yeah.
all the time, which would take a lot of the punch out. So I would
Take
imagine
away
like a
the
lot of
mystery, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
for
mystery
sure,
would be gone, right? Yeah.
right. So I would imagine like a lot of these priests, yes, like want it to be true, but I think that typically like they do approach it with a level of reasonable skepticism, for the most part, whereas practicing Catholics maybe are more inclined to sort of like bypass the church and be like, no, what I saw was real, or something like that. So
It's nice
um
to have proof of your faith.
yeah,
That's a
sure,
that's menu.
absolutely, yeah, it
Do
sure
you think
is.
there's like a bunch of rooms in the Vatican that house these various things that they've collected next to, I assume, the
Yes.
room full of dicks they cut off all those statues? Like, I gotta imagine there's one room for that, all those dicks, and then another
uh
room for all
the
these
Vatican
things.
archives, yes, does include a whole bunch of stuff that you are not allowed to touch and see because of for that very reason. But
Just a
I
bunch
actually
of
think like the
bleeding-eyed statues in one room.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. I think the portrayal generally of like the approach that they take is pretty well represented in this movie,
okay.
for the most part,
I mean,
right?
again, it looks
I
really beautiful. Again, that
yeah.
wherever they were, wherever that was shot, I thought, oh, this could look so cheesy. I mean, is it as bad as what's his face's Italian accent? No, nothing ever will be.
Oh
But
my God, Enrique Colantoni. Oh,
and
it's
then
the
he is an
best.
Italian man, so it's okay. But still, he
Yeah.
opened his mouth, and I went, "What's Veronica Mars' dad doing in this
I
motion
so
picture?"
to me he's still from Just Shoot Me, and I love Veronica Mars, but like Enrique Colantoni will always be Just Shoot
What's
Me in my
off-brand
book.
Joey Pants doing in
Yeah,
this motion picture?
yeah,
But yeah, no, this is interesting. I'm glad I got two religious. I'm going to call you both experts. I'm going to call you both experts
sure.
because I'm
I
an
mean, why not?
Episcopalian. We're just kind
Yeah.
of we're like Catholic methadone. Is the thing.
Well, you'll not be surprised, Jen, that I also grew up Episcopalian. So
Uh oh, we're two Episcopals, Kelly.
No, not me.
high
Mm-mm.
five.
You
No,
Sorry.
cannot come to
No.
our Episco disco.
Kelly's from the Bible Belt, so they
I
don't
am.
they
Yeah,
don't
it was
they
a
frown
totally
upon
different
our
it was
kind.
a really different experience.
Like speaking in tongues different.
Yeah, that kind of
Yeah,
But
thing.
that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. No, it was
Episcopalians are quite boring. Now that's interesting.
yeah, no,
we're
it was a
delightfully
different
boring
vibe.
though. Like
Yeah.
we're it's yeah.
Right. So yeah, so the
Anyways,
rosary is
No,
oh,
no, I married a former Catholic, so going to a Catholic church was a different kind of experience for me, but it's one of those things but that now through like years and years of marriage I'm much more familiar with, and then doing the religious studies degree also familiar with. But
yeah.
yeah, no, it was wild when I first went to a Catholic church where I was like, what is happening here, and why is Jesus nailed to things? Like, this is what is going on, right?
okay.
Like,
This is so great. I'm so glad. Two religious studies degrees. Oh my goodness. Okay, this must have been an awful watch for you both in that regard.
no, it was well, what's funny is my partner was like, "You're watching Stigmata?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he watched it with me the first time in the movie theater. And I was like,
That's
and
our
He's
movie.
like this again.
he's
You're like it's been
no,
24
he
years.
was like, he was like, "No, man, I'm not doing it again. Like, you can't make me. Like, I'm not doing it again.
You
Like,
guys fell in
once
love
was
over
good."
that tub scene.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I know.
oh, nice to
He's
revisit.
like, he's like, "Nope, not worth my while to do this for a second time." And then
Yeah.
later he was like, "Maybe I would watch it with you." And I'm like, "I'm not going to make you. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to force you to watch this lovely movie with Patricia Arquette
Mm.
and Gabriel Byrne again."
She was in my like top my second favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. She was in Dream Warrior.
Right.
So
Right,
yeah,
right, right.
she's gotten real dirty and bloody in
So
that.
she's in all your favorite horror movies
That's
now.
right.
Hmm.
So I guess like my question, we'd have to jump around, but once we realized, we eventually realized that the stigmata is coming by way of this stolen rosary that was owned by this priest.
Yeah.
Haunted
A
rosary.
haunted
Yeah.
rosary. So, do we think that it would have been anyone who got that rosary if she sent it to any person? Because it doesn't feel like Patricia Arquette was chosen to have stigmata. It just feels like she opened up her mail and,
Yeah.
mom stole the rosary. Like, I guess you could walk it back and go, well, her mother was meant to whatever, sure. But it just feels like just an accident. Anybody could have gotten this rosary. Anybody could have had stigmata.
I think the movie tries to do the like gender swap Saint Francis of Assisi thing,
Oh, you
but
mean
doesn't
by
really
Frankie
necessarily
Page?
sell it really well. So her name's Frankie. She, like Francis of Assisi, before she has her like conversion, is like a party animal. She like goes to clubs, which like is what Francis was doing in the Italian Renaissance or
He was
pre-Renaissance
going to
era.
clubs.
No, but he was like having a bunch of banquets and parties and like blowing his parents' money. And you get the sense that her mom is like, rich and can like travel to far flung places for fun and does
Oh
a
yeah,
lot,
that her
right?
apartment. I know this was the late
And that
'90s
fucking
and
apartment.
everything, but
But
Yeah.
that loft apartment, like, come
Yeah.
on, right?
on just
Yeah.
a hairdresser's salary, I don't think
Right.
she never
Right.
worked. I think I saw her cut one hair. I don't know.
I think it was trying to do a modern St. Francis thing, but like
Oh,
didn't really sell it. Like,
Yeah, it didn't follow through.
yeah,
Really.
or
Yeah.
didn't really. It was almost like it thought it was being obvious, but you kind of like have to think about it in order to get what it's trying to say there. But yeah, I mean, I think it kind of could have been anybody, but I also think that it was trying to be like, Francis was someone who criticized the way that things were happening in the church and like was a reformer, and like she's going to bring about like the ultimate reform, and her name's also Frankie. So like it's interesting, but it needs a better writer to like drive that nail into the wrist, so to speak.
I mean,
I was going to say drive that point home, but
they
I'm
didn't
going
even
with
really
the
make the connection
crucifixion.
in the movie. Gabriel Byrne talked about Francis of Assisi because he was the
Yeah.
first person to receive the
Stigmatic.
stigmata. He was the first
Yeah.
stigmatic, yeah. And that's it. And then nobody said, "Oh, that's weird. Well, your name is Frankie. That's strange." Anyway,
Yeah, there was no callback, right? In the way that they really could have done a
until
callback
the
to that.
very
Yeah.
end, and then it was just like, "Here it is."
Yeah.
Well, in the end, she's even like standing by the statue, right? You
Of
know,
Saint
there's
Francis.
that moment, yeah, of Saint Francis, right? And
Right.
she's got the little dove on her hand and everything. But yeah, like wasted opportunity there to really
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like good ideas
pull it together.
from a bad writer, and like that can often ruin like a what's conceptually a very cool set of ideas, but like nothing ever quite works. Like the whole notion of kind of taking the sort of exorcist angle, but inverting it so that because like stigmata is supposed to be like a blessing, like a
Yes,
signal of your divinity,
it is.
and
Mhm.
it still is here, but it's also doing it in this like horrific exorcist way, right? And I
Right.
think that like that was cool, and like that's a really cool idea, but again, it's just not well thought out enough or
No.
written enough for it to really kind of like land, right? And yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like really kind of interesting concepts and beginnings of ideas that I think are,
Yeah.
like you could remake this movie and make something better,
Yeah.
I think. But as we said, Jen, this is such a goddamn 1999 movie.
It is. It's crazy. Well, the director, Rupert, not Rufus Wainwright,
Not Rufus Wainwright.
he said that what fascinated me at that time was the idea that it was a deeply religious story about someone who wasn't religious, and now religion
Yeah.
invaded their life and overwhelmed them.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Which again is kind
I'm
of
like, oh, this
St.
is
Francis.
a menstruation allegory. My bad. I'm like, okay, I get it. Okay.
I mean that too, kind of, right? Like
I'm like, I'm picking up
again.
what you're putting down, my friend.
No, I mean, so when we say like certainly when I think of it as being like one of the most 1999 movies that we have covered on this show, period, right? Is that so first of all, the aesthetic, the whole like there's like a little Run Lola Run in there. There's like a little Matchbox 20 music video happening.
Yeah.
There's like a little
Yep.
9 Inch Nails. There's the Billy
There's
Corgan
Billy
score.
Corgan. Oh my god!
Everything's the
those,
sort of like
those quick camera, those nauseating quick camera cuts. Oh, they're so
with like the blur wipe.
Yeah, it's so 1999. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's what
the
I
high
it's
contrast,
what I don't like.
washed out colors.
Well, again, they did that on purpose for the blood.
Yeah,
it's all for the blood,
which is actually cool. Like that justifies it in some way. But like obviously, as a music video director, that was the music video aesthetic of the time, and he's just applying it to like the cool thing with the blood. But yeah. But also, I think the whole like sort of this kind of religious horror story or sort of religious angst story, like, and religious conspiracy theory, like again, very pre Y2K, you know, like around this time was when like interest in things like the Gnostic Gospels and the Gospel of Thomas that plays a big role in this movie in weird ways, but also like when the book like the Bible Code came out and like people were like Y2K, end of the world, things happening, like maybe the Bible has secret messages in it and we should right. You guys remember the Bible Code? It was a big like.
I thought you were going to say, "Do you remember the Bible?"
bestseller.
And I was like, I don't know, John.
No,
sounds familiar.
No,
no, I don't remember.
I vaguely remember the Bible Code, like vaguely, yeah. But
so the Bible Code was this book written by like this mathematician who discovered that if you put in like a certain algorithm into the Bible, it like does a bunch of like Nostradamus shit, right? So like if you circle every like fourth letter or something, it like spells out the like Kennedy assassination or something.
Sure.
And yeah, exactly. And it was like people were like, holy shit, because everybody was kind of looking for some kind of way of framing like the new millennium and the Y2K bug.
Wait,
and all
which
that
version
sort
of the Bible?
This is the question, right? It's like, and then so a bunch of people were like, well, I did this to Moby Dick and it also predicts the future.
Right. Right. Yes.
So really the reality is if you put in an algorithm, you can like make any message you want appear within a book. Just pick a random book and you will still find prophetic messages in them that you can sort of decode. But this is very much in line with that, I think, where it's like people had this interest in the Gnostic Gospels and the idea of like Vatican suppression, and like this sort of feeds into what became the kind of like Da Vinci Code hysteria.
Yeah.
Although I know people make fun of the Da Vinci Code, and I think they really only make fun of it because of Tom Hanks' hair. But like, I did come away from that book going, "Oh, I think this is the cup of Christ. I think this guy nailed it." Seems right to me. I don't know.
Yeah. This all checks out.
This does seem like something the church might want to hide. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Sure. And it's a very similar thing. I will give this movie credit for being
like a fellow head like me,
for being less dumb than the Da Vinci Code. Like generally the facts of this movie are closer to
dumb in that way, because I thought it was like just a fun scavenger hunt. Like come on, the Code is fun. It posits that Jesus Christ was banging.
I get really mad at the Da Vinci Code for all kinds of reasons, and I get mad at this movie for a few. But I think there's some things about this movie that are actually quite good and actually quite thoughtful. And I can talk about that later. But anyways, so where are we in the plot? Where are we in the movie right now? So
I think we got to like Haunted Rosary.
Frankie's got the Haunted Rosary. She starts getting the shit kicked out of her everywhere she goes by Jesus.
Yeah.
Or not
this other guy.
Jesus. See, that's the thing. Yeah. Help me out here, you two. Stigmata is from God, except for this one time, ? Kelly?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she assumes it's from God, right? I mean, that's like her running assumption throughout the movie, and I guess I moved with her running assumption that it was like something that was happening to her from some sort of divine source, right? I don't know though. I mean, because that was what was happening to the priest, so I assume that it echoes his
Oh,
experiences.
wait,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know he also had
Yeah, because
stigmata.
the
Did I
priest
miss
was
that?
a stigmatic too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. You know, I did have like a
Yeah.
2-minute snooze at some point on my person folder, so that might
You missed a key plot point. Yeah, no.
have. He's gonna be listening to this, and I'm gonna. Um,
Oh. No, I mean, it was one of those like moments where they're like, he wears in this picture, you can see he wears gloves, and they're like, why
Yeah.
does he wear gloves? And it's like, oh,
is it
because he had the
cold?
stigmata.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stigmata.
Anyway.
I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Okay. Sorry. Now I'm.
No, it's fine. I like it, but it's like a scene that lasted, I think, like 45 seconds in all honesty.
Okay. Well.
So, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
if you had got, I mean, in all honesty, we're lucky that I made it through that scene and I wasn't like getting up to get a glass of water or something when this happened. But yeah, so I mean, I assume it's some sort of divine thing going on here, that's happening alongside of her possession, the possession piece, which is very odd too,
Mm-hmm.
that we would note here.
She's being possessed by him, right? He's
Yep,
passing
yep,
along his stigmata
Yeah.
abilities to
to
her, and like,
her.
and yeah, it's very weird,
Yeah,
and it's only there for the cool horror movie aesthetic part of it, right?
yep.
That's fine. I'll let that go. I think
I'll,
the
I'll
no,
let it
I just
ride.
I think the thing that bothers me more is exactly like, what is Jesus up to here? Like, is Jesus
Right.
trying to be like, you guys found the real gospel, and I must do a bunch of bleeding to make sure everybody knows that it's the right one
Well, I
now.
think
Like,
it was all to. Here's what I don't get. It seems
yeah,
to have all led to Gabriel Byrne going back to this church and finding these hidden scrolls. So,
Right.
like,
right.
just tell him about the scrolls to begin with. Why are we putting this poor woman through all this stigmata nonsense instead of just this ghost of this priest just whispering, "Hey, the floorboards, wink, wink, just right there, just get them right there." It
Right.
seems
Hmm.
like a
Right.
lot to do.
A lot of spectacle, a lot of suffering, a lot of
Well,
theatricality, right? Just for this to happen. A whole wall in that very expensive loft that's dedicated to her writing out, this gospel by hand,
I do love when, like, the second she started speaking, I looked at my person and I said Aramaic.
Yeah, yeah.
And I rolled my eyes and I know what, you know.
Amazing.
It's always the way. You're like, of course, it's because someone you want to say you think they're gonna go Latin, but you know if it's the real deal, it's Aramaic.
Well, and also I have to say, because again, we got to put this in context. This is kind of ahead of its time, because like, weirdo Christians didn't give a shit about Aramaic until the Passion of the Christ, which is 5 years after this or 6 years after this, right? So
Scored by, oh no, I was thinking of the Last Temptation of Christ. My bad. That's the
yeah, no,
Diesels, the Passion.
different, better movie.
Gross. Yes, yes.
Yeah, but Aramaic, like, because Mel Gibson like used Aramaic in that movie, suddenly people cared about what Aramaic was. This predates anybody really caring about what Aramaic is, and I do think it's sort of like, I will give it credit for knowing that if there was a historical Jesus, that historical Jesus spoke Aramaic, right? Like, that what we understand of this person would have been an Aramaic speaker,
Hmm.
and that if you were to find an Aramaic gospel, then that would be pretty profound. And also knowing that no gospels were actually written in Aramaic, nor do we have anything written in Aramaic, because it wasn't a learned language. It was a spoken regional dialect, and everything was written in Greek at the time, right?
Mm.
So I do think it's cool that the movie went there and like understood the stakes of like, it would actually be pretty fascinating to find an Aramaic document, especially since it was before Aramaic
Yeah, I
became
guess the
like
question is like
a
how many
popular
people could read
texture.
it, and I guess the answer is at least three.
Well, that one guy,
The one
that one
guy.
dude.
Well, the three, because remember they split it up. They split that
Right,
document
right,
up
right, right.
between three, so
Yes,
at least
yeah.
three priests. Now, I do want to say what I found interesting, what I learned about Patricia Arquette and Gabriel Byrne is that, to no one's surprise, Gabriel Gabriel Byrne is Catholic. He's Irish. He's Catholic.
Sort of, though.
Well, he said,
it's
I'm
interesting.
Catholic. He said, I'm
Yeah.
Catholic. So this, like, there was a lot of different, I think, real, I'm air quoting right now, real Stigmata stories that they pulled her experiences from. And one of them, Gabriel Byrne name checks in the movie, and his name is Padre Pio.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I went to wherever and I saw Padre Pio, which I don't think the timeline lines up because I think the real Padre Pio was well before then. I can't remember.
No, he died.
I didn't write down the dates for Padre Pio, but I got everybody else's dates of all these other stigmatics.
He died in 1968, so it's possible.
Yeah, I guess Gabriel Byrne
Byrne
would have
so
had
let's
to
say
have
Gabriel
been
Byrne is
10. 10 years
or
old.
let's say he's like 50 in this movie, so 20. It's possible.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I don't think. But anyway, so
Yeah.
in these commentary, Gabriel Byrne goes, I know about Padre Pio. I was aware of this because, of course, I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
And then he later says, hilariously, for some reason, he looks perplexed as he's saying this. For some reason, I always wanted to play a priest because I'm kind of fascinated as to why people choose to become a priest and all that's involved. Now, he doesn't seem to have any problem with this motion picture. He's very obviously interested in finally becoming a priest. Now, it's Patricia Arquette who was like bringing her religion into this. He was concerned about how the story would treat the sensitive subject matter, but she was like, and I quote, I wasn't going to do the movie because of my religious beliefs, says the actress who claims that her primary relationship in life has always been my relationship with God. I used to wish I had stigmata when I was a little girl.
Yeah, I believe it.
So everyone's getting their dreams. Everyone's dreams are coming true in this movie. So when I heard about the script, I was kind of excited. But then I read it and said, what is with this getting thrown around and all this scariness? Is God being mean to this woman? I'm like, no. It's Father What's His Face.
Mm-hmm.
So then they changed the script, and then Arquette researched into the lives of real stigmatics, which reassured her that her character's creepy behavior would be okay. And that included trying to seduce Gabriel Byrne. And it wasn't a slam against God. And then she said, the more research we did, we found that stigmatics usually do have this demonic accompaniment, like they're a radio station that's open to all these weird sound waves. So that's what's happening when she's now becoming more like the Exorcist. She's just kind of receiving all sorts of things. But you just don't get that. They don't convey that very well in the movie, not even at all, like full stop, period. I found myself going, I thought this was a gift from God. Why is she so mad? Why is she throwing Gabriel Byrne around her inflatable apartment?
I think one of the things that makes this movie kind of watchable, and I've seen it several times now, right, is that I think both Gabriel Byrne and Patricia Arquette are very good in this movie. Like they very clearly are kind of bought in, or if not bought in, like have found something about it that they feel connected to and like are really exploring here, which I think is really cool. I've read some interviews with Gabriel Byrne around this time talking about his religious views and how he sort of like is always kind of on the fence between identifying as like an atheist and a Catholic and kind of both or kind of neither, and how he was really kind of exploring his religious identity as like a cultural Catholic, being Irish, and then also like someone who was a big doubter, and like this movie was like actually really weirdly personal to him, and also like he played the devil the same year, which I think is interesting, in End of Days. And Patricia Arquette is also like very good in this movie. Like she very clearly is like kind of taking the material seriously. Like neither of these performances are sort of over the top and sort of ham-fisted, which I think is unique and strange and like better than the material, and part of what sort of makes this movie kind of like weirdly enduring.
Yes, I agree. And why is God being mean to this woman? Like we could ask that. We could, get that. Just pull that out and just say, well, why is God being mean? Period. Oh, yeah. I did think that was interesting. I did not see religious Patricia Arquette coming down the pipeline at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I have a question. How the fuck is she paying all these medical bills? Is it because
So
of a rich mom?
I wanted to know how she had insurance as a hairdresser. That that was one of my first questions. Is as soon as they started running
Pre-Obamacare.
all
You guys,
the tests, I was like, how does she have
now
insurance?
who's
And
now
so
who's bringing
the
up
loft,
logistics?
the loft department and the insurance were like immediate questions that I had. It was they're like, we need to run more tests, and I was like, who's paying for the more tests? Like,
I'm-
what's
See,
going
I think
on
that was
here?
actually like, I think, again, the idea is that she has rich parents. I think
Yeah.
that's part of the
Yeah.
idea. They just
Well,
never fucking tell you
Hold
that.
on.
It's really frustrating.
Let me say this. When I lived in Los Angeles in the year of our Lord 2000, and I once had a crazy sty, and I had to get it drained, and I did it in the emergency room, and I just was that bill ever paid? I could not tell you. I was 20.
Sure.
Couldn't tell you. Where's that bill right now? I don't know. I'm sure we still filled out paperwork way back then, but it certainly wasn't as intense as it is now, even
Yeah.
in 1999/2000. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me either if she just walked into that emergency room and then walked the fuck back out and was like, I don't care.
Well, for that, you can thank Ronald Reagan, who passed
And
the
I
law.
will. Hey, Ronald.
Yep.
Thank you.
Who passed the law that no person can be turned away from an emergency room regardless of status. And that
You
is
know,
why
that's one of the good ones then. I'll take
medical
it.
bills. Yeah, well, it's good except for the fact that it like there's no plan B.
And you know what? Now that Roe v. Wade's been overturned, let me tell you
Yeah.
about no plan B. No, anyway.
One of my favorite lines in the movie. So I also like one of the things that I found interesting, and again, if a better writer had written this, I think would be far more well explored, is the idea. So the doctor's like, we think you might be epileptic. And one of the things that religious scholars have often posited is that a lot of our most kind of fervent religious converts in history have been epileptics. There's a lot of research and a lot of scholarship on the idea that Paul was an epileptic. And so I loved, and I'm epileptic, so I'm especially sort of, endeared to that. And so like, I liked that moment, and I thought like, oh, that's a cool and interesting angle to explore. But then my favorite line in the movie is like the doctor's having this conversation with her about wanting to do some tests for epilepsy and stuff. And she's like, yep, put it on my giant medical bill. And she goes out of the hospital, and Neo Long is like, what? You should get a second opinion. And I'm like, that's not even his first opinion. Like, he's not even an opinion yet.
I was confused by the barrage of testing because I didn't put it together that the testing was happening because of the slashes, I guess, that appeared on her body. Because this happened right after the subway, right?
Right. Yeah.
And in my mind, I thought they were like, we think there's perhaps something like a mental illness. And I'm like, these aren't the tests they give you when they think there's something psychologically wrong. Why is she getting like all these tests? I just was very surprised. Like, but it didn't even seem. I guess they'd give you all those tests, even if huge wounds did appear in your back out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Are these the tests you get for that? That's not an answer you can Google.
But. Yeah, I have no. It was one of those things where I was like, the doctors are stumped, and they're like, you know what we should do? We should just run more tests.
I mean,
while we're here, like, we should just do this. It'll be fun, right? Like,
if only they had that pre-Nuvo or whatever the hell that machine is now that everyone seems to be crawling inside of Kim Kardashian. It's like some sort of super machine.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that's wrong with your body. I'm like, oh, well, it's too late.
It's too late.
Oh, well. I'm just very surprised that they were taking this woman so seriously. The amount of time I'm like,
no, I mean that's real, right?
Yeah.
Like they weren't instantly like, well, okay,
we've diagnosed you with dumb bitchitis. Oh, okay.
Even that one nurse who was like, Frankie, these are obviously self-inflicted wounds, and she's like, how would I get the fucking nail all the way through my, like, you know,
the
she's
other
like,
hand.
yeah.
how would I do this? Right. Yeah.
But of course, like the one person who doubts her is like the woman doctor. It's weird. I don't know.
Well,
It's very
internalized misogyny
okay.
is very real, Joel.
Well, the whole conversation in the hospital is like one of my favorites because she's like, "Are you under any stress?" And she's like, "I cut hair." Right? Like it's just like this like remarkably hilarious conversation.
And I sometimes
having,
bang Patrick Muldoon for no like
yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah, I
no,
know this hilarious conversation that they're having. Where I was just like, "This is the best," right? Like. Just they're just on different wavelengths that they're just not communicating in similar ways, and it just there's some great lines in it. So
we do have to talk about the Portia de Rossi and the Patrick Muldoon of it all.
Oh my God.
It's just like when I saw him, I was like, oh, I'm older than my person. But I was just like, my first thought was Melrose Place. Melrose Place is coming onto this show. I know he was also, I think, a soap actor.
I have a slightly different touchstone for Patrick Muldoon than that, but he to me is the person who broke up Zach and Kelly on Saved by the Bell, and
that's right. That's right. I did know that. He's always been a bad boy.
He has.
Kelly, do you have a Patrick Muldoon memory?
I do not.
How has Patrick Muldoon hurt you, Kelly?
I don't have one of these stories, so this is amazing to me. Oh my gosh.
He was Amanda's bad boy boyfriend in Melrose Place. Amanda played by Heather Locklear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
It was
Amanda,
thrilling.
Bad girl and bad boy. Yeah. Just a lot of badness happening.
So that was pretty exciting. Portia de Rossi with
Portia de Rossi.
Was she supposed to just have braids, or was it like were they white women dread?
I think they were white.
I
white
think
girl dreads.
they were.
Also,
yeah.
I do want to say I looked at my prints at one point. And I said, I don't know what this store is. You can get a haircut. You can get a tattoo.
Or a tattoo.
You can get a tattoo, or you can get piercings.
Something pierced. Right? I mean, that's a lot. I don't think that place exists. There's too many different things.
There was a lot going on. It was a lot going on for one place.
And there was just one person for each activity. They don't want to, you're never going to need two people getting a haircut, nor will you ever need two people in need of a piercing, apparently. So.
No, I did love that they were like piercing the guy's ear, like right in the middle of all of the other activity, where I was like, because that's an activity that you really want to be paying attention to, not necessarily in the center of the hub of activity.
Gossiping about your stigmatic friend.
Right.
I'm like, ma'am, I know you're talking about holes, but.
I kind of feel like during the deregulated Clinton 90s, you could just do that sort of thing because it was good for the economy.
I mean, Kelly, I don't know how old you are, and I don't. If you want to tell me, I can tell you I'm 43. And
so I'm 43.
Okay.
See? Yeah.
And I don't know if you did this, but I would just I went through, I had a lot of different piercings. I had a tongue, I had my eyebrow, I had my front lady bits. These guys, these guys, not these one. But I would go
right here.
Yo, you had that one. There was the spike. Yeah. It's always the spike.
No, but it also fucked my gums up, and I had to have gum surgery after. So.
Oh no way!
Sorry, because it rubbed. Because it did it cause them you rub? Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised because the tongue ring would often mess with people's teeth because you clang it against.
Yeah.
You chip your teeth. Yeah. I had tons of people that I knew. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I used to get all of as many holes as I could all along the top of my cartilage. Kelly, did you have any cartilage piercing?
So I did have cartilage piercing, and I have one left now at this point. But I had multiple cartilage piercings.
You would just do it. It was a thing. Yeah. I would be bored, and I'd be I guess I'll just do another weird cartilage piercing.
Yeah, I had one up here. I had an eyebrow piercing as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's very. I associate that very much with the late 90s. That's the piercing.
No, it was a thing.
Feverish pitch. Mm-hmm. All over the place, and now.
And I feel like there are places you could go, in Ithaca, New York, when I was in college, that you could get your hair cut while also getting a piercing. I feel like that's a thing.
John, did you go to Ithaca?
I did, yeah.
That's such a beautiful college. I have a friend. I have a friend who went there. My friend Mike, years before you, I believe, and my person's from upstate New York, so I think he speaks highly of Ithaca, the place.
Where in upstate New York is your?
He's from a place called Alfred.
Okay.
It's near Rochester-ish, an hour. Mm-hmm. So Ithaca is like supposed to be this like beautiful liberal arts college, right? Is it super liberal arts, or am I thinking of
Yeah.
something else? Okay, Kelly, where did you go? We're just taking a brief tangent.
Oh yeah, no, I went to Florida State. So number one party school in the 90s was the claim to fame. Now I didn't party there because I was a super nerd. But
That's
that's,
not.
you
Where is
know,
Florida State? That's not in Tallahassee.
in Tallahassee.
That's not Chi Omega. That's not Mr. Ted Bundy.
Oh, yes it
Mr. Ted
was.
Theodore Bundy. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Boy, oh boy. Well, Ithaca's out. Let's talk about no.
Oh wow!
You're like
Short-lived
instead,
time in the sun.
Instead, we will move along.
I didn't finish college,
Ithaca.
but if I did, it probably would have been at UC Santa Cruz, home of the banana slugs.
That's amazing.
Oh, fighting banana slugs.
That's right. Anyway, so sorry. We've gone on quite
Yeah.
we went on. So sorry, everyone. We're back. Everyone's back.
Where were we in the plot of the movie? So like, I think we've reached the point now where basically
He has
nothing
no
happens till the
insurance, and
very
we're
end.
furious
It's just
about it.
Yeah,
flirting.
no. So there's a lot of like non-plot in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is something that was sort of interesting to me, where I was like, so there's just a lot of nothing happens.
Yeah.
And then she
until
just gets,
something
like,
happens.
Well, we haven't talked
She
about
gets
the
caught up
Jonathan
when it
Price
gets
of it
boring.
all, because there's a
That's
B,
true.
there's a B story that's happening back at the Vatican
Yes.
with JP,
Mhm.
accomplished British actor,
Who I
and
heart,
Veronica
despite
Mars,
the car commercials
Veronica
that were
Mars'
very
dad.
annoying
Yeah.
in the 90s. Yeah.
And they what Rufus Wainwright said about his character is Jonathan Price, is that this person, he's not meant to be a bad guy, although at the end he arguably is a very bad guy. He's just you're meant to believe that he does believe he's doing the right thing.
Yes.
He's just going about it obviously in the very wrong way. So he's
Yep.
a complicated antagonist.
Yep.
Which I see until the end, when it's no, this is very bad until the end. So
Right.
yeah, and I get that. I see it as well. Trying to protect the church, I guess.
I also, yeah, I like also that this movie does not have, again, unlike the Da Vinci Code, there's no like comical villains. That it is quite like, for a movie that is this kind of sensationalist and kind of poorly executed, it's like weirdly thoughtful, and it doesn't really portray anybody as just outright bad, and you kind of understand Jonathan Pryce's motivations, and sometimes you're like, I don't know, Gabriel Byrne, like you might not be in the right here necessarily, like you're not super awesome at everything either, and like I enjoy that. I mean, Jonathan Pryce is also, I think, an actor who can pull that off really well, because he's just so fucking good. It's also worth pointing out that Jonathan Pryce, about 20 years after this movie, would go on to play Pope Francis.
Oh, that's right.
In an amazing movie called The Two Popes.
That's right.
With him and Anthony Hopkins as Pope Benedict. And looks so much like Pope Francis that, in fact, when Pope Francis was elected, his son texted him and said, "Dad, why are you Pope?"
Dad, congratulations.
Which I love.
No Academy Awards, huh? But Pope. Well,
I love that so much. No, because like nobody had heard of Francis until he was elected, and so his son just saw him on TV and was like, "Dad, why are you Pope?
Dad, are you
now?"
in Italy?
But
did you just get out of a conclave? No, Mr. Wainwright talked about the potential reactions to this movie. It's kind of we're talking about it, and he says, there are some people who are a little more dyed in the wool religious who may believe some of these things in the movie are a threat to them. But I don't think any movie that is provoking you to re-examine the life and words of Jesus Christ could be considered that controversial, which I gotta disagree. And I don't mean that this movie is controversial. I think that if you question anything at all regarding the Bible, people will get up in arms, sometimes literally. So I don't know. I think we've seen that played out all over the place, trying to re-examine what the Bible is saying or is not saying. This movie is certainly not doing that, but I think we can confidently say that looking at the Bible in different ways has not made people go bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. Oh, this is also a very funny fact. Um, Rupert Wainwright said, I originally wanted this to be the first crucifixion themed movie to come out on Easter Day, but I was voted down on that.
Oh.
No.
I'm like,
Damn.
I'm like, I guess this is a crucifixion themed movie ish. But yeah, what a fun
Wait,
guy.
he wanted it to come out on Easter? I would have liked it so much more if it did.
He was voted down. Who voted against it? The studios, I assume. Boo to them.
Yeah, because I think, like, if it came out on Easter, I think it would have a very different legacy. And like, because what it did was, like, it came out in the midst of all of these, like we talked about Stair of Echoes and Sixth Sense, and like it came out amidst these sort of like supernatural sort of like horror, but like horror that your mom can deal with movies that were like very big, right? The top 3 movies at the box office this weekend are all sort of fit into that vibe. But I feel like if it leaned in more into the sort of like religious controversy side, it would have been cooler.
Wouldn't it have been better to come out on Good Friday? Not Easter.
Sure. Well, it would have been Good Friday. It would have been Easter weekend, right?
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like,
I thought he meant Easter proper. I'm like, this was back in the days when movies came out on a Friday.
Yeah.
Did I hallucinate that time in our cinematic lives? There was a time in our lives when literally movies were only released on Fridays.
And now they're on Thursday. Yeah.
Guys, okay, cool.
Yeah, no, you're not making that up. That was real.
Yeah.
No, it is real.
And then they could have played that Black Crowes song, Good Friday. The only song I'm aware of that is about Good Friday.
Yeah, so I think in terms of like the I mean, Kelly, I know you can talk about this as well, but like the way that people react to challenges to biblical tradition and authority is a real concern, right? Obviously. I mean, yeah.
No, I think that's real, and I think that that I was reading what was I reading? I was looking at reviews of the movie earlier, and it was an Ebert review, and
we talked about the Ebert review.
Yeah, did you talk about it? Yeah, yes. About complaining about the Catholic theology of it, yes. Right? I mean, so even that, like, people that want to complain about this movie and how it doesn't match with Catholic theology in some sort of way, and I'm like, goodness gracious, right? Like, it's a horror movie, for goodness sakes.
Even Ebert was like Catholics should use this to like recruit because it's
to recruit. Yes, right. I know.
because he was saying, like, I don't know why Catholics are upset about this. It makes the Catholic Church seem really cool, right? And it's like what we were talking about with Matt. It's a very similar, right, on our show. It's a very similar sort of. It's like, it makes Catholicism seem badass, and so like, why would you not lean into that? There were a lot of people who, and again, this is pre-Da Vinci Code, and I can't stress this enough, because the whole conversation about like Catholics freaking out about calling things anti-Catholic hit a fever pitch with the Da Vinci Code because of what a cultural phenomenon it was. But there were people, Catholics especially, who called this like, even just like critics who were like, this is like rampantly anti-Catholic, and I'm like,
right.
It's actually really not. It's actually very like it
seems to be
stupid.
In support of Catholicism, very much.
In a lot of ways, it does, and like it gets a lot of shit wrong. Like, we'll talk about the little like title card coda in a.
I forgot to look into that, but I'm glad,
because that's really important to this equation. But in general, I think it's actually very measured. There's this great line in it where the translator guy, who's like his friend, right, is talking about the Gospels, and he's like, a lot of people had different memories and different ways of understanding Jesus, and so that's why there were so many of them. And how can you expect someone to like encapsulate the Son of God in one single content? And it's a very like reasonable understanding of what the Gospels actually are. And I was like, that's cool, and that's kind of ahead of its time, and I like this. But when I was saying in the beginning about this whole idea of like a TV show where a Catholic, priest, scientist, investigator does this,
Right.
it wouldn't last a fucking half a season before all the Catholics started like losing their shit over like how anti-Catholic it was and how it has to be canceled right immediately.
Even if it's
because
based on
it's
a very real, and I'll just call it department
because
within the Vatican. Like, no, this exists. I think that what I find most interesting about a lot of, you guys know way more than I do, but I do think that some very dedicated believers are only dedicated to their like one specific section of their belief instead of something in its totality, in its whole. I bet a lot of Catholics don't know about that aspect of the Vatican, that they have this scientific, now I'm going to call it a branch. Get a new word every time and I bet that they would not like that, because obviously a lot of them are denying all kinds of science all the time. Although that's more of the where you were raised, Kelly, is more of the creationist science deniers.
Much more that vibe. Yep.
But still,
deep concerns over science.
I think a lot of people would, like me, find it quite shocking that that the Vatican's like, well, yeah, of course science is real because it comes from God. I'm like, you got me. But yeah.
It's a really interesting thing. Like, the difference between the Catholic Church and Catholics is like increasingly more complex. The number of people of like traditional Catholics who like hate Pope Francis is astonishingly high.
That's our current Pope. That's our current Pope.
Correct. It's our current Pope. Yeah.
Is the German guy? No, who was that?
No, that's Benedict. That's the one before.
Yeah.
Is this one?
Francis is the cool one. Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that's like, hey, you know what, guys?
The chemist.
Gay people
the scientist.
Are okay.
Yeah.
Ish.
He's like,
he says,
who am I to judge? Ish. Within certain boundaries. I think most Catholics know that the Catholic Church officially embraces evolution as a doctrine and like is not creationist. I think most of them know that there's a Vatican observatory. There's like a lot of investment in science in the Catholic Church. But I also think a lot of them want to ignore that. It's weird and that the sort of structure of the church is far more kind of cosmopolitan and progressive than the flock is. And that's kind of always been the case, like in any era of Catholicism. It's a weird organization. I mean, it's an organization of like several billion people. So, it's going to be weird if you got that many people in your club. But, it's a weird sort of tension between those kind of polar sides. And again, I think like the Gabriel Byrne character is a really interesting sort of articulation of that it's not necessarily, again, very well written, but like as an idea, I think it's a cool way of kind of understanding the tension within Catholicism of like rational, modern sort of empirical science, and then also this like really old world kind of faith belief, right? That he decides that he wants to sort of embrace more because he's like, I thought about what science was telling me and I was unsatisfied. And so like, that's why I re-embraced my like religious side, which I think is a really cool part of the movie. And it's just Gabriel Byrne being cool because he's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. So anyways, yeah.
Well, all right. I think we're almost at the end. She's got all of her little stigmatas, all
except the spear in the side, right? Which would be the final one.
So also there's one moment in this movie where I do cringe a little bit, like for the body horror, and it's like that last big stigmata she has. I think it's when the like you see the nails going through her wrists or whatever. I can't remember what actually happens, but I was like, "Ugh!"
The wrists
turn
were
away.
First. Did she get?
Was it her feet? Was it her feet?
Oh,
the one on her feet was pretty painful. Yeah.
Yeah. It did get me at one point. There was one point where I'm like, "Ugh," but the rest of the movie,
the rest of them, I was fine. But
I was fine. Just kind of bloody and weird and music video-y.
Yeah. So so then I saw it. See, this is why I have to watch a movie literally 10 minutes before I do it, talk about it, 'cause it's already rapidly fading from my memory, and I literally watched it like a few days ago.
Yeah.
How does she end up at the convent?
Oh, it's because the priests show up at her apartment, remember? Like
Right.
The naughty,
he's
the
taking
bad
care of
priest.
her,
Oh, that's
remember? They end up in bed together
right.
Very sweet.
platonically,
They have
right?
great chemistry. Can I just say
They
this, by
have
the way? Like,
great
it's
They
chemistry.
awesome.
really
Like,
Great
do.
I love them.
chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the priests show up and then they have to take her away to take care of her, right? Put her in the care of the nuns. And so that's how she ends up separate from him because
Okay,
they send him
that's
home
right.
to rest, right? Not home, but to the church of the other priest who earlier is the one who called them in, I guess,
Right.
earlier in the movie because he's the one that realized that it was Stigmata, right? And
Oh, that's
brought the
right.
troops in. Yeah. But that's how they end up separate and her under the care of the nuns that sets up that like last final scene and sets up the exorcism,
Yeah,
I
that was
guess,
weird.
which was
Mhm.
odd.
Do you think he knew at
Mhm.
that moment that she was possessed by the other, or potentially possessed, or who knows if he believed it, by the other priest? Or he just
Man, I don't know.
I
It
don't
was
know either.
weird.
Yeah.
It was super weird. Because it's almost like he thought she was possessed by some sort of evil spirit, but then it's very clear that it's the priest and that he doesn't want that knowledge to get out, right?
Yeah.
About this gospel, right?
Right.
So then of course he tries to murder her.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I cringed at his hands around her neck. I don't like a choking
Yeah.
scene. I can do all sorts of blood, but a
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
strangle, that's not for me.
And then, of course, Gabriel Byrne comes back and has to save her, right? Because naturally, it's the way this has to work
And the
in some sort of
whole
way.
room is on fire, and then it's
The
not
Yeah,
room
on
it's
is
all
on
fire.
fire starter. It's
fire.
great. Yeah, yeah.
Wait,
Yeah,
That.
you know.
did
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
guys clock? My person and I couldn't stop laughing about this. Okay, Gabriel Byrne. I don't remember if it when this happened, if it was before he went home or after he went home and came back. But he's got Jonathan Pryce in the hallway, and he tosses him against one wall, and then he tosses him again on the opposite side of the wall, and then brings him back again, like he's ping
Yeah.
ponging back and forth. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, he's trying to hit every inch of that wall with this man's
Yeah.
body. I think it was
Mhm.
after he saved Patricia Arquette from being strangled by Father Jonathan Pryce. And it
Yeah.
was just like whack against the one wall and then the opposite wall and then the other wall. And I was like, no, this is very funny visually.
Yeah.
Which is a good echoing of the scene where Frankie throws around Gabriel Byrne's character,
Yeah.
right? Where every part of the loft is then destroyed because she has to fling him around everywhere.
Yeah.
When she's possessed by the priest, possessed by a
We
demon,
don't.
who knows? It's unclear, really, in that scene too, what's
Mhm.
going
Yeah.
on
And then
because
he
I
finds
couldn't
the
tell.
rosary somehow in that whole mess,
Yeah.
just picked it right up. And I went, oh, no way. There's water.
Yeah.
And the one thing I also notice is everybody's quite accepting of the things that they're seeing around them, especially in the beginning when Gabriel Byrne not only sees this statue weeping blood, but every candle gets blown out in the church, and
Yeah.
there's all sorts of spooky things happening, and he's just like, hmm. And I'm again, if there was a television show, we'd learn, oh, this is like the 10 millionth time he's witnessed
Right. Yeah. That
a
it's passe
miracle.
to
But
him.
I'm like, if
Right.
this
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
first time, he seems very fine. I would have been like, did you guys see all the candles go out? That was crazy. Anyway,
Kelly immediately thought of when Matt Kressler was like, when there's a
Right.
priest and too many
Yes.
candles.
When I was watching it earlier, that's the first thing I saw too. Is as soon as she had all the candles out in her
Yeah.
room, I was like, "Oh, we know we're in a horror movie now.
She
We
has a
just need
lot
the
of candles, a lot of
right?
inflatable furniture. I like,
We just need the
and
priest." And then like he
a
shows up, and
train
I was like,
approaching her.
"More."
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was
Yeah.
like, well, "Here we go. This
Yep.
is what we need to know about this." This is the Matt
What?
Kressler
I
rule.
mean, wait, can you imagine when she got in that bathtub and just lit all those candles? It would take like
Yeah.
one solid hour to get all those
It had to
candles
be.
lit.
It had to be a solid hour. And they
Because she
continuously
lives
kept
in a
lighting
music
them.
video. Like, she lives in a fucking
Yes.
Matchbox 20 music video.
She's in a police
It's
music
so
video.
weird.
No, I've never seen more.
Why
candles.
is her headboard a oncoming train? Like an
Oh,
Art
you know
Deco
what?
oncoming train. It's
It-
rad,
Yeah.
but like, what
It's
is
so
that
big.
choice?
It's enormous, that bed.
It
Yeah.
was the inflatable furniture that brought me
The
back,
inflatable
really.
furniture,
It
I'm like,
was, you know.
Hey, you save money.
Everything about that apartment, once again, and I know these things probably still happen today, but the amount of
Yeah.
like headless mannequins I saw in apartments in the late
The number
90s.
of choices made in the decoration of that apartment is
You're
quite
supposed to be like,
astonishing.
she's so funky and weird.
She is weird.
You are,
Frankie.
And I'm like, I guess.
Yep.
She's a girl and her name's Frankie.
Ugh,
That's weird.
crazy. Although
It's
I did
weird.
have
Weirdo.
that, I don't know if you saw the
Edgy.
giant chunky green plastic ring she had.
I love that ring.
I had
yeah.
that same ring and I
I'm
wore it.
pretty sure that I had a bubble ring like that at some point. Yep.
Yes. And I was like, if she has 1,000 butterfly clips in her hair, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, she had that little twisty hair at one point and then the like messy hair on top. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that there was a juncture in my life where that was the only hairstyle I had. And
I did love her
I
hair.
don't know how I feel about this.
Yep.
This
was as close to my experience of the late 90s as I've ever seen in a movie. Most of the time, I'm like, I'm sure this existed, but this wasn't me. But I lived in LA then, and when they were at that horrifying club, I was like, God, I definitely went there. Sure, I've definitely been in a terrible place, no doubt.
Jen, I wrote a note watching the beginning of this movie that just says, she lives in The Crow.
She lives in The Crow.
Yes. And don't we all want to? Yes.
Like if Brandon Lee just walks by at some point, like I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. That's where she lives.
Yeah.
If anyone should come back from the dead, my God, let it be Brandon Lee.
Oh.
So we find out, like the plot twist, right? We find out that the reason she's getting the stigmata is that the priest who died was protecting the Priory of Zion. No, I'm just kidding. The Sangreal of Jesus. No, protecting the real, true, original, number one gospel of all time, the Aramaic thing that our Gospel of Thomas that we have, I'll talk about that in a second, is a translation of the original Aramaic Gospel of Thomas that truly, really, really is the sayings of Jesus. And Jesus says, fuck priests. You don't need them. You don't have to, whatever.
He's like, you don't need, your body is a wonderland. Your body
is a wonderland.
You don't have to go to church. That it's in you, baby. You're there.
Go cut some wood, and there's
now we've
Jesus.
heard that message somewhere else in a different movie. It's tickling my brain. Like, is it to the Da Vinci Code? Motherfucker, it probably is. I think it is. God is in you. God is it. You don't have to. A house of the Lord is not required, which of course would be very threatening to the church because that's all they got. All they got is fear and those pretty buildings.
So this is why she's being stigmatized, and it doesn't appear to have worked. She doesn't get the message out to everybody, which is weird. Nope. There's no resolution to this movie.
There's no resolution.
Are we supposed to understand that Gabriel Byrne showing up at the church? And again, how? Who told him? Did she tell him at one point? Yeah. How did he get the message? And if he did get the message, why I ask, did she need to go through all of this when he could have just simply gotten this message?
Right.
Hey, man, check under these floorboards. Right. I assume after he got that, then people would go, oh, dang, that's real. And it's real old. It would be sent to some place to be tested. Yeah. And they'd go, yep, this is definitely old. And somehow the word would get out, and I guarantee you it would be a fart in the wind, and it wouldn't change a single thing, and people would either choose to believe it or not. So this fear that the church has was probably unfounded, because that little slip, which looks like it was written on human skin, I don't think it would have done anything. I think some people would have gone, oh, that's interesting. Fake news.
Is this moved on. Is this movie aware that the Protestant Reformation happened? Because I'm not quite sure that it is.
I don't think it is. So that was the thing that got me. They're like, we found this.
Tell me more. What do you think?
We found this. This is what it says. And the whole time I was like, but you found Protestantism.
Right.
That's what you found. Congratulations. We've had this happen
Yes.
before.
Was there proof before? What's the proof? What are the Protestants?
Well, it just
Now they got
the
this
ideas.
kid.
The ideas are the threat has already. The church, I'm sorry, has already faced this threat.
Yeah,
is what
right.
I think. The point here is like Protestants have already gone through these ideas and presented these and done
We
this,
don't
and
we
so
don't
yeah,
need priests to absolve us of sin. Like
don't
it's
need this, yeah,
right.
in some sort of way. And so yeah, that's the whole thing that I thought when she said that message at first, right, where he was like, oh, this is really beautiful to hear you say this, and I was just like, I've heard stuff like this before
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Where have I heard it? And I'm like, oh, churches that I grew up in. Oh, that's where I've heard this before.
And Jesus
Yeah,
didn't
so
like
yeah.
beat the fuck out of Martin Luther with like blood, it's
Right.
But
just
but
weird.
isn't, and again, I don't think anybody would have cared. But is the messaging here that we don't need priests? Because I kind of
Yeah.
thought that it was more, you don't need this church at all. You don't need any of this. Not even just priests in general,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
specifically, you don't need the house of God. You don't need this building. You don't need this.
But
You
that's
don't
essentially
need
what
this.
again
God
what
is in
Lutheran
you.
Protestantism
You're good.
says.
Okay, I don't know
Yeah.
anything about the
Yeah.
Protestants, even though it's
Yeah.
protest is in the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luther's protest was basically that everything that the priests and the structure of the church had built up as essential to salvation was not in the Bible, right? And so if you look at the Bible, there's nothing about like needing to go to confession. There's nothing about
Okay.
a hierarchy of priests who are the vicars of Christ, who are the only people who are capable of absolving your sin. And that Paul says that it's like a gift. It's just there. You just take it if you want to. And so already the idea is like, look, we know the Bible basically contradicts the Catholic Church. Like the Bible is not, scripture is not the justification for the Catholic Church. The big like mistake this movie makes is assuming that revelation is going to somehow force Catholics to be like, well, wait a second, maybe I don't,
That's right. Oh
and like,
no.
Yeah,
trust me,
they're too
Catholics
powerful. in their
Catholics
belief.
love that shit. They love the like the dress up and the cathedrals and the incense and the confessions. They love it all, and they are not giving it up for any weird gospel that says that if you just go out to your yard and cut some wood, like there's Jesus right there inside the wood. It's not going to happen. We know that historically. I will say, and I'm going to give the movie a tiny bit of credit here, I will say that what it tries to do is kind of up the ante and suggest that there's an Aramaic version of the Gospel of Thomas, which would be profound and amazing to say that, like, if we found a gospel that arguably could be the verbatim words of Jesus,
or written by
maybe that
Jesus
would like
himself, which is even crazier. I thought they were kind of saying, no, he wrote this down, even though
yeah, which would
prior
be
to this
like, and
moment he was dictating. But
that's a
suddenly he was
bridge too
like,
far.
I'm tired.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So like the thing at the end, right? So like I have this book, right? Like here they are. Here's all the forbidden gospels. I bought them at Barnes and Noble like several years ago.
That's
right?
where all the forbidden gospels live.
The movie at the end with the title cards at the end,
Yeah.
it's such, and I have to say, so I'm going to read this, like there's two notes about this on IMDb and I think they're both very funny. So one says, the plot centers on the supposed ban of Gospel of Thomas. In fact, the Gospel, along with many other Gnostic or non-canonical texts, was never officially suppressed by the Catholic Church, and its translation can be freely bought in bookstores.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Thomas was he one of those little cuties at the Last Supper?
Hold that thought. I'll get back to that. I want to read the other one first.
Okay.
It says, a desperate conspiracy by the Catholic Church to cover up the existence of the newly rediscovered Gospel of Thomas, which would apparently destroy the entire institution of religion if discovered. However, it was actually discovered in 1945 and published and translated shortly after with no opposition whatsoever.
Yeah, which was what
I
that
love
title
IMDb
card was at
fact
the end,
checkers
right?
sometimes.
At the end, they were like,
Yeah.
by the way, this is all true. We found this.
So it also says that like scholars believe these are the closest things to the real words. Like, no, they fucking don't. There is not a single scholar on earth who believes that. Like, that is complete nonsense.
It's cute when they do that, isn't it? Though, where they're like, scholars believe this, and scholars are like, "Say what now? What did
but
you
it's a
say
very
about us?"
kind of like, again, it's a very like 1999 like GeoCities conspiracy theory that
Well,
sort
you
of like
couldn't
makes
check
its
it.
way.
You couldn't check it. What
right?
were you going to do? Were you going to check it? You're going to go to church and go, hey, is this true? Watch this
Yeah.
whole movie first, though, because you're going to need to.
So I'm going to give you a little like crash course in Thomas real quick.
Okay.
The name Thomas actually comes from a word that means twin. And Thomas, as a concept, as a character, seems to have emerged out of a early Christian or sort of anti-Christian conspiracy theory that Jesus had a twin brother named Thomas, and that Thomas,
Oh my God, just like
which
Elvis.
means twin,
just
like did the whole like you know the Prestige. It was the Prestige where like right. The twin brother shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm alive."
I think you mean The Illusionist. I'm kidding. It's the Prestige. I know.
It's the Prestige.
They came
I
out at
know
the
I
same
got
time.
the right movie of that year.
I know, I'm
of
kidding.
that year, right? So Thomas emerges like in the Gospel of John. Thomas is the one who is like, "Let me touch you to make sure you're real," right? And it's sort of playing on the idea that like, no, Jesus did not pull off a trick with his twin brother. He really was like fleshy and reincarnate and everything else. The Gospel of Thomas, it's very hard to date when it was written. An early version of it may have been early. The one we found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, that it does get right in the title card at the end. The one that was found was probably written sometime in the 3rd or 4th century AD, right? So quite a bit later than Jesus. Now, that's not to say that that it's not a copy of a text that predates that by several centuries. We just don't know. We don't know how early the sort of Thomasine tradition was, but it paints a very different kind of a Jesus. It's a gospel that's just all sayings. The whole gospel is literally Jesus said this, Jesus said this, Jesus said this, Jesus said this, Jesus said this. And it's interesting and important for a lot of different reasons, but it's not important because scholars believe it's the actual transcription of what Jesus said with a guy who was like, "Ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, that's interesting. Ooh, let me write this one down." Right?
Sir? I said slow down.
Yeah.
And we did. One missed word, and
we got
a whole
and that's salvation right there.
I mean, we got a whole religion we're trying to map out. We need to get all these words.
Don't do it. I do think, though, that at the time, there was a kind of and I use the term GeoCities conspiracy theory. I think there was a GeoCities conspiracy theory. If you lived in the 90s, you get that reference. Of a kind of Bible code sort of ilk, because a lot of the publications like this one with like Elaine Pagels and Martin Meyer translating and publishing these texts fueled a kind of revision of early Christianity in the sort of popular mindset and made people think like, well, what if we got it all wrong? And what if, right, there's this like earlier gospels and we don't need priests or churches or anything else. So I think that's kind of, I'm not blaming this movie entirely, right? Like scholarship on this 25 years ago was very different from what it is now, but it's laughably wrong like what it gets wrong at the very end there in terms of what it is suggesting. It's also wrong about St. Francis of Assisi and like when the stigmata started happening. Gabriel Byrne says he was 23, he was 42. It was very late in his religious life that he received stigmata, and it's because he was dying.
As somebody in their 40s, that's 40-something-year-old erasure right there, and I won't stand for it. I won't.
Nope. No.
Sorry,
and the whole thing, I was like, when he goes, he sometimes was losing a pint of blood a day. I'm like, no, he fucking wasn't.
He would
like, what are you talking about?
He would not have lived, I don't think, especially
Where
then.
are you getting this information from exactly, Gabriel Byrne? That is not true. but I can imagine some weird website claimed it was true in like 1997, and so the writer was like, "Let's write that one down." And
I wonder if they
It's a
had.
fun fact.
I didn't look at. I haven't looked at all the credits. I didn't look at any of the credits.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I'd be curious to see who they were working with on that side of things. Some sort of consultant. Some sort of.
I don't think ananybody.
But
I
it's
think
a
it was
little. You just think it was
GeoCities.
just like not a Google clearly,
I
but
think it was religionfacts.angelfire.com. I think.
it would be Angel Fire. It'd have to be Angel Fire.
It would have to be. It would have to be.
The only one.
Oh my
I would
god.
have these answers. Well, they tried.
But yeah. But it's
They
pretty.
tried.
And it's got good performances. And it
It
tries.
does have
like,
good performances. It tries hard, I feel like.
It does. It does.
And the music
It
is
doesn't phone it
good.
in.
The music is very good. There were some very recognizable songs in there for me. That was another. That was
Yep.
like there's the Matrix side of 1999, that music, and then there's this side of 1999, which was more my
Yeah.
speed at the time. More of like a not a propeller heads, but like what was like some of the softer. Like who was Nobody Loves Me.
6 Feet Under.
Like, oh yes.
Or what's
Six
that?
Underground,
What's the
Sneaker Pimps?
Six Underground?
Sneaker
Underground.
Pimps.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of
Sneaker
weird,
Pimps.
softer. I was like, Billy Corgan did a good job. So
Yeah, I like the score. I really do. Like, I think it's it sort of defies the
visual.
traditional kind of like Catholic horror score.
Yeah, there's not a lot of children chanting or Gregorian chanting. Although
Gregorian chants.
if anyone
no
wanted,
Dies Irae.
if anyone wanted to drop any sort of Enya or Enigma, I would have gone. This is fine. That's also
like
fine.
End of Days is a shit ton of Dies Irae and Gregorian chants, but like this,
No,
this is just like,
That's
yeah,
how they always sound. That's the one. I just have that one. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Please, you think I wasn't like just like blasting Gregorian monks when in my teenage years and or Enigma? I was, or Enya.
Yeah, there's that Sarah McLachlan song with the Gregorian chant.
Well, there was also just like Pure Moods or whatever. I don't remember like whatever. I don't know why they were so popular then, but you couldn't turn on the television without an infomercial being like,
Pure Moods.
Do you like monks? And I was like, I think I do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, bangers all around. Corgi.
Kelly, you're a Pumpkins fan. Well, this is the like Adore era of Pumpkins. This is post Jimmy Chamberlain being fired for heroin and them not being very good.
Never be ignored. I love that.
But it's very Adore era Pumpkins, which is not my favorite, but I liked the score.
Oh, I love that. I love that album.
I like the score. I like
the
music on this movie. I mean, I even like the weird 1999 aesthetic of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's something endearing about it that I kind of liked beyond the first title screen that I was just like, man, I'm too old for this shit, right? Where it's like all just kind of dashed together. But beyond that,
it was beautiful.
The weird sunset and like,
yeah.
I didn't look up filming locations. I don't suppose either of you, again, as I continue to obsess over where this alleged Vatican was actually filmed.
Well, they did film some stuff like in Vatican City, at least some external shots for sure.
Like that would
be... because like there's some very like clearly Vatican Square is like.
It seems like, well, sure, I saw like, but once they were walking, there's one scene where they're walking inside of a building, and it's quite overhead, and it's huge stone columns, and I was like, where is this? And then I asked myself, is this convent also the place that was supposed to be Chilton in Gilmore Girls? Because that's been used quite often. Anyway, but no, I the production section of the Stigmata Wikipedia page was a little light, so I was like, oh, I don't know where this movie was filmed.
Mm-hmm.
But obsessed. If anyone just likes,
probably somewhere in Pittsburgh,
the Holy Land.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also like. There's one moment. Speaking of like just being a late 90s movie, there's that there's that scene when Gabriel Byrne is like walking around this impossibly lit alleyway at night with like impossible weather conditions, surrounded
when
by
he's chasing her.
newspapers.
When he's chasing her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there have not been that many newspapers in existence
Blowing in the wind.
since the late 1990s.
Higgledy
This is true.
Higgledy piggledy, and she's on top of an abandoned car, classic, scratching more Aramaic. Imagine that guy if there's an owner of that car coming out and going, huh.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money you could make on the future eBay from your Aramaic hood car. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Especially because she foolishly paints over it. I'm like, God, that was dumb.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was nice to see a fax machine again.
Oh yeah.
That's
true.
And also when Father whoever the guy that Gabriel Byrne was working with at the Vatican, one of the 3 priests that did these translations, after he was sent the photos of the Aramaic that she painted or scratched into her own wall, and then he felt like he was being watched by off-brand Joey Pants, and he was, and the priest quickly deletes it, and then off-brand Joey Pants pulls it back up again. I just said out loud, you gotta empty that trash. Where were computers in 1999? I was like, he just hit delete casually.
Yeah.
Clear that history. Empty that trash.
What are you doing? Come on. Follow through.
I did like seeing that enormous PC. Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Magic.
I will also, one more thing to credit this movie with. This is a minor thing, but sometimes when I watch movies of this time, I think, would smartphones or Google have changed the plot of this movie? And the answer to this movie is no, not really. Like, you can still do this with smartphones. Like, it wouldn't not make sense if you had modern technology and Googling abilities.
Well, that was like, they made that the Matrix movie again, and I just remember thinking,
yeah,
where are they gonna find payphones? What?
Yeah.
What?
It's a fake.
That entire film
world. It doesn't
is
matter.
contingent upon payphones, and guess what? We don't have them anymore. So.
Well, but the film takes place in a fake 99 anyways.
I know.
So yeah. So that's okay. So we'll wrap this up. But to both of you, like, I don't know. I'm so on the fence about this movie, honestly. Should people watch it if they haven't already?
Oh, it's a weird little movie, but I didn't hate it. So, I think it's entertaining, but it is really a question of like, I got about 3/4 of the way through it, and I was like, what is actually happening here? Like, I had this moment where I'm like, what is actually the action of this movie?
It ceases to be about anything for the second hour. Like, I
do not know entirely. So I'm a bit on the fence about it too. But yeah, I think it's worth maybe a watch if you want some sort of weird movie to entertain you on a Saturday afternoon.
Afternoon. That's interesting.
Well, especially if you like weird religion shit. Like,
especially if you like weird religion shit. I think that's fair. Yeah,
it scratches that itch for sure. If you're just like, if you're a little bit of a religious feel like a religious conspiracy or a church burying things that will ultimately destroy it, or honestly, if you like Gabriel Byrne.
I mean, seriously.
You're going to get an eyeful. And if you think anyone's going to let this man be Irish in a movie, you're wrong.
Not happening.
This could be the one time. Because we got crazy accents coming out of every crack and every crevice in this motion picture. And they were still like, we need you to be we're so sorry. We do need you to be American. Unless his accent was so subtle. Because when I was watching the DVD.
Oh, the accent's very. I don't know where he's from.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I was watching the DVD extras via YouTube or whatever, the behind the scenes, and his real voice sounds crazy because I've primarily heard him with an American accent in every movie, and I thought, well, now I don't know which one's real and which one's fake. He sounds fake. But anyway, Gabriel Byrne. I mean, come on, Cool World. This guy's done all.
It was very much.
Those are the two movies.
It was very much when we talked about Existenz last time. It was very much a Christopher Eccleston moment where I'm like, "Where are you from here? Like, where do you get this accent? Gabriel Byrne? Like, where am I placing you?
And to be clear, John is a xenophobe. So when he wants to know where you're from,
True.
it's because he only likes America, and he said that.
That's true. Yeah, I'm very, very obviously pro-American, white Americans only.
That's right. To be clear,
well known for that.
On this one.
Yeah.
So wait, really quick. Other than The Exorcist, what do you think would be a better version of this movie, or maybe a better move?
Well, Kelly's never seen The Exorcist.
I was gonna. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Kelly, you've never seen it.
No, I've never seen
it. Just last week.
You said that. Did we say this last week? You say this to me, a person born in the District of Columbia. Come on.
Yeah, I do say this. I still have not watched it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, what's the best religious horror movie?
I really like The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
That's a good one.
I like it because there's some incredible body work being done by the future Mrs. and then ex Dexter. That's the first time I saw her in a film and the things that her body does, but it's also based on a true story of a woman who did die because of an exorcism, and the priest was then put on trial. So if you've never seen this movie, it's loosely based on this story, and then running concurrently with this woman's possession experience is the trial that the priest is on.
Oh, wow.
Because of his relation to her death. It's very good. And she's incredible. What is her name again in real life? Jennifer something, I think. She ended up marrying Michael C. Hall. She played Dexter's sister
for a while, and then
on the show, and they were married for a minute. But anyway, I would say if you want a crazy possession religion,
Jennifer Carpenter.
Thank you very much. The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I saw that in theaters, and I turned around and I saw it again in theaters. I loved it. That was early 2000s, maybe. Loved it.
Yeah, it was early 2000s. Mine is Frailty, which I love.
Yes, with Billy P. Right?
Yes. Billy P. Yep.
Bill
got it. Directed by
Good. That's great. Kelly, these are 2 movies you have to see, 3 including the Exorcist.
I was like, I'm so bad at watching movies, is what I've come to realize.
I don't think.
I admit this on a movie podcast that I'm just really terrible.
Well, I'm interested in this, and we're gonna. So you've been on the show before, Kelly. So we've asked you your favorite 99 movie already, but I'm gonna ask a different question of both of you because I'm interested in the answer to this. What is your sort of what's your Gabriel Byrne movie? Like when you think Gabriel Byrne, what's the movie that makes you Gabriel Byrne-y? What makes you burn with the fire of Gabriel?
I just jokingly said Cool World, but
I know.
Cool World.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And also, The Usual Suspects, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Damn it.
Sorry.
That was going to be mine. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. No, you're good. No, that's mine for Gabriel Byrne, for sure.
You take Usual Suspects, and even though I'm tongue-in-cheek about Cool World, it is a movie that is deeply weird, that I love, and I think Kim Basinger puts in a hell of a goddamn performance in that picture. So I will also weirdly say Cool World.
So mine is definitely Little Women, because him as Friedrich is the best, and that's where I was like, I love this dude so much.
He's been in
I love
so much.
He's awesome,
including but not limited to Vampire Academy. You're welcome. Guys, you're welcome. I'm gonna know all the worst movies someone's ever been in.
And the first season of Vikings, in which he is amazing. And that's an amazing show. But Kelly, any other podcasts you do you want to plug before we?
Sure. I'm the co-host of this podcast called Pod Only Knows that talks about religion. And talks to religious studies folks about why they do what they do and why religion matters in the world, which might be something that people want to pay attention to.
Well, I'm subscribing and downloading it right now. So
right now, you sure are. Of course.
Now, Kelly,
you sold me.
Kelly, what is religion?
What? Oh no, you're not. No, friend. No, you have to listen to the show. No, we don't have the time. So
no, hold on. Let me stop you there. I'm hearing a word.
The theologian Paul Tillich describes
Oh my gosh! I was just thinking. I was like, Merriam-Webster says.
Yeah.
Just right.
The poet Maya Angelou once wrote,
I'm gonna ask ChatGPT later what it is.
Oh
right,
my
that's fine.
goodness.
That's fine. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Check
Thanks
out
for having
Pod
me.
Only Knows, whatever that is, wherever you find quality podcasts. And Jennifer,
Yeah.
what's coming up next?
This is a movie that says they're all still gonna laugh at you.
Thanks, Callie. Maybe go see Stigmata if you haven't already, and if you have, tell us what you think, because I'm so interested in how people think about this movie still. Anyway, thank you guys both, and look out for frogs, and we will